it's pretty clear that the left, which is very big into women's empowerment, is not big into all women's empowerment. Their treatment of you was obviously horrendous, up to and including the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where your looks were mocked openly, and this was taken to be totally normal because obviously you're a Republican. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. The liberal women were the meanest and nastiest, all in the era of women's empowerment, which was pretty shocking. You would think even if we could politically disagree, we could agree that it's good to see women rising up in the ranks. I was the third woman to be White House press secretary, the very first mom to ever hold that job. You would think that would be a point of pride for all women, but unfortunately, the radical left women only are about women's empowerment as long as you think like they do, talk like they do, and believe in the same things that they do. That only applies to that sector. If you're a conservative woman, then they're not for the empowerment of that side. One of the incidents that's probably one of the most impactful for me personally during my time at the White House, it was after an LA Times reporter had mocked my appearance in a pretty mean way, so much so that they eventually had to retract part of the story because it was so hateful, which, as you know, that is not something they do regularly in the LA Times. It was right after the Correspondents' Dinner. It had just been kind of a rocky time. Even like a lot of my colleagues didn't know how to address it, so just kind of ignored bringing it up. But we were in Japan walking into a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Abe and the president, who has every reason to be focused on the meeting in front of him and not concerned about, my feelings or where I am, stops and says, hold on. He turns, he looks me straight in the eye, and he said, Sarah, you're smart, you're beautiful, and the only reason they come after you is because you're good at your job. And then in very colorful words that I won't repeat on here, he says, don't let them get you down. Kind of slaps me on the shoulder and he's like, now let's get back to work. And so in that moment, he's the one that realized, I needed encouragement. It wasn't the women on the left that were standing up for me, but it was Donald Trump. And to have him as the ally and the one to empower me certainly, I think, propelled me and gave me reason to keep fighting, knowing he believed in me and trusted me to carry his message.
So how did you deal with the slings and arrows on a personal level? I mean, obviously, if you're in this space, you're going to get a certain amount of it. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. I mean, I think that there's this misperception in the general public that if you spend your life in politics and you're attacked, well, that's sort of the normal day's work, and you never feel the pain. But obviously, that's not true. So how do you deal with that?
Certainly, there are moments that are pretty difficult. When people are saying really horrific things about you, I don't think anybody, no matter how tough they are, can just completely block it out. So there are days where it gets to you, but I try to not allow the distractions to take me away from what I came there to do. And knowing that I had a family that supported me and loved me no matter what, I had friends that did the same, and frankly, I had a faith that defined me. Knowing that I had a God who had created me for a specific purpose gave me confidence to block out. I didn't need the New York Times or the Washington Post or anybody else to define me. I had a creator who had already done that. Knowing that and knowing who I was as a person before I ever stepped onto that stage or stood behind that podium gave me what I needed to keep going and keep fighting.
So you actually had a very long tenure as press secretary. We know that some people did not have quite as long a tenure as press secretary in the Trump administration. By the calculations of our producers, you lasted for 64.09 Scaramucci's. So what does it take to be able to last that long in a job as volatile as this one?
Well, I mean, I think in large part having a good relationship with the president made all the difference. Being able to have candid conversations with him and feeling like I knew where he was. I mean, it wasn't always perfect, certainly. I had moments where I made mistakes, but I had a good enough relationship with him that when those moments came, we fought through it and moved on. But him trusting me and having confidence in me to carry his message made a huge difference. But also having a really good team around me and feeling like I was prepared when I stepped out there every day was imperative for me surviving some of the most difficult days. But I think at the end of the day, it really came down to having a very good and strong foundation with the president. I also had the advantage of going second. I tell people that all the time. Sean Spicer had an impossible job on any day, but he had to do it before any of the rest of us. And so getting to be his deputy, I learned things that did work and things that didn't work. And so having that 6 month or a little less than that before I actually had the full job helped prepare me in a big way.
So how do you think Kayleigh McEnany is doing now that you're no longer there?
I think she's doing great. I think she is giving it back to them as much as they give it to her, and she is tough. Something a lot of people may not know is Kayleigh and I both had I like to say we learned from one of the best in the business. I'm a little biased, but she actually interned for my dad as one of her very first jobs out of college and worked on his show at Fox. And so we had a good mentor in the early days to give us a good foundation on how to fight back.
Thank you for tuning in to The Daily Wire, one of the fastest growing conservative media outlets in the country. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of our content.